two dynasties, one vault the jewels of Sweden's House of Bernadotte. There is a tiara in Stockholm that was once pawned in London to finance a war. Its owner, a 22-year-old empress named Amalie of Leuchtenberg, deposited it along with its accompanying parure as collateral for a loan when the Brazilian Empire was under military pressure. The emperor won his campaign. The jewels were redeemed before his death in 1834, and the tiara eventually made its way across the Atlantic and across generations into the royal vault of the Swedish monarchy, where it became one of the most treasured pieces in a collection whose history spans more than 2 centuries and 3 continents. The Braganza Tiara is, by most accounts, the most important single piece in the Swedish royal vault, a diamond floral masterpiece of such exceptional clarity that the stones have been described as resembling water rather than mineral, set in designs that convey botanical delicacy at a scale of material richness that no botanical object could actually achieve. In 2026, Queen Silvia of Sweden reserves it for only the most significant state occasions. Crown Princess Victoria wears it for grand ceremonies that mark the continuity of a dynasty whose origins were entirely unforeseeable. When Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte, a French marshal who had risen from obscurity in the Revolutionary Wars to become one of Napoleon's most capable commanders, was elected Crown Prince of Sweden in 1810 and eventually became King Carl Siv Johan in 1818, he brought with him, or acquired through marriage, a set of jewels rooted in French imperial culture. What followed across 2 centuries of marriages, inheritances, purchases, and gifts was the assembly of one of the most historically layered royal jewelry collections in the world. This is the story of that collection and of the people who have worn it, lost it, reclaimed it, and passed it forward. The House of Bernadotte is the reigning dynasty of Sweden, having occupied the Swedish throne since 1818 when Jean-Baptiste Jules Bernadotte, born in Pau, France in 1763 as the son of a lawyer, was crowned King Carl Siv Johan. His path to the Swedish throne was one of the more improbable ascents in European royal history. A commoner by birth, he rose through the ranks of the French Revolutionary Army, became a Marshal of France under Napoleon, and was elected heir to the Swedish crown by the Swedish Riksdag in 1810 when the existing dynasty failed to produce a successor. He brought to Sweden both his personal jewelry acquisitions and, through his wife Tsar Clary, access to pieces connected to the French imperial court d'Isire, had been briefly engaged to Napoleon before he broke off the relationship, and her sister Julie married Napoleon's brother Joseph. This network of connections placed the early Bernadotte collection within the orbit of French imperial aesthetics and the extraordinary objects that Napoleon's regime had commissioned, gifted, and accumulated. Over the generations since, the Bernadotte collection has been augmented by pieces acquired through royal marriages jewelry entering the Swedish collection from German, British, Russian, and Brazilian royal families as Swedish royals married across Europe's interconnected aristocratic networks and through direct purchase and commission. The result in 2026 is a collection that functions simultaneously as a historical archive of European royal culture across 2 centuries, a diplomatic record of the alliances and relationships that shaped Scandinavian monarchy, and a living collection actively used by the Swedish royal family at state occasions, Nobel Prize ceremonies, royal weddings, and other events where the communication of dynastic continuity and national prestige is part of the ceremony's purpose. The Bernadotte jewelry collection has been defined as much by the women who wore its pieces as by the historical circumstances that brought those pieces into being. Empress Josephine, born Marie Josepha Rose Tascher de la Patrie in Martinique in 1763, first wife of Napoleon Bonaparte, is the central figure through whom the collection's most storied pieces entered Swedish possession. Josephine was an extraordinarily passionate collector of jewelry and decorative arts whose taste combined the neoclassical vocabulary of the Napoleonic period with a personal instinct for the unusual and the historically resonant. Napoleon provided her with jewelry on a scale appropriate to the most powerful monarchy in Europe, and she received gifts from allied monarchs and court figures who understood that pleasing the Empress was a form of political communication. After Napoleon divorced Josephine in 1809, the marriage had produced no children, and Napoleon required an heir. She retained her title and her collection, and pieces from that collection eventually passed to her descendants, who married into Scandinavian royal families, bringing French imperial aesthetic sensibility into a Northern European court context that transformed their meaning without diminishing their beauty. Queen Silvia of Sweden, born Silvia Renate Sommerlath in Heidelberg, Germany in 1943, who married King Carl V Gustaf in 1976, became custodian of the Swedish royal vault's most important pieces through her marriage and has worn them across 5 decades of state occasions with a consistency and commitment that reflects an understanding of what these objects represent institutionally, not merely aesthetically. Crown Princess Victoria, the heir apparent, has worn many of the collection's signature pieces at the events that mark her gradual assumption of greater royal responsibilities, creating in the visual record of her public appearances a documented continuity between the generations that is one of the collection's most important social functions. The Bernadotte Cameo Tiara is the collection's most direct connection to the Napoleonic period and to Empress Josephine. At its center is the Cameo Tiara, a piece of red gold adorned with seed pearls and 7 intricately carved cameos depicting mythological figures. The cameos were carved by 3 of the most celebrated engravers of the neoclassical period, Giuseppe Girometti, Filippo Rega, and Vincenzo Catenacci, artists whose work on hardstone and shell defined the aesthetic vocabulary of a revival movement that looked to ancient Greece and Rome for its formal inspiration. Napoleon gifted the parure to Josephine around 1809, and it reached Sweden through her granddaughter Queen Josephine of Sweden and Norway, who inherited it and wore it as part of her own collection. Princess Sibylla of Sweden received it in 1932 and wore it at royal weddings and coronations before eventually setting it aside, feeling its style no longer suited her. In 1961, Princess Birgitta revived it as her bridal tiara, establishing a tradition that Queen Silvia and Crown Princess Victoria have continued. In 2026, Crown Princess Victoria still wears this parure on significant occasions, maintaining a tradition of use that stretches back more than 2 centuries to the workshops of Napoleon's court jewelers. The Vasa Earrings are one of the collection's most historically complex pieces, carrying within their design a record of Swedish dynastic history that extends back beyond the Bernadotte era entirely. These diamond earrings with their elaborate briolette drop pendants within diamond frames belong to Queen Lovisa Ulrika, wife of King Adolf Frederick. The name they carry, Vasa Earrings, was given to them by their son King Gustav III, who wished to connect the Holstein-Gottorp dynasty's jewelry to the memory of the ancient Vasa dynasty that had preceded it on the Swedish throne. When King Gustav IV Adolf was deposed in 1809, the same revolutionary moment that created the vacancy that brought Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte to Sweden, the exiled family took the earrings with them to Switzerland. They returned to Sweden later in the 19th century when Queen Carola gifted them to Princess Victoria of Baden for her marriage to Crown Prince Gustav. In recent years, Princess Madeleine has worn the earrings, including at her sister's pre-wedding gala in 2010 and at her own wedding in 2013, demonstrating the collection's capacity to move through generations and to continue being actively used rather than purely preserved. The Baden Fringe Tiara entered the Swedish collection through Princess Victoria of Baden's 1881 marriage to Crown Prince Gustav. Inspired by the Russian kokoshnik style that was fashionable in aristocratic circles across Europe in the late 19th century, the tiara was first worn as a necklace on its owner's wedding day before being reconfigured as a tiara. Crown Princess Victoria has worn it more than 35 times during her public life, making it one of the most frequently worn pieces in the collection, a record that speaks both to the tiara's visual versatility and to Crown Princess Victoria's comfort with the communicative function that consistent use of identifiable jewels performs in royal public life. The Braganza Diamond Tiara, the collection's most important single piece, came to Sweden through a different route than the French and German pieces. Its origins lie in Brazil, where it was part of the imperial collection of the House of Braganza. The tiara's exceptional quality rests on its diamonds, Brazilian diamonds of unusual clarity, mined in the Minas Gerais region of Brazil, that were acquired during the peak of Brazilian diamond production in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The story of Empress Amalie pawning the tiara and its accompanying parure in London in 1831 to finance the military campaign of Emperor Pedro Vrand, then recovering them before Pedro's death in 1834 when she was only 22 years old, is documented in historical sources and adds a layer of human drama to an object that might otherwise be appreciated purely for its aesthetic qualities. Queen Silvia wore it for her first official portrait in 1976, establishing an immediate connection to the collection's most significant piece that has continued across her reign. The Russian pink topaz suite represents the collection's connection to the Russian imperial court and to the patterns of gift-giving between European royal families that were one of the primary mechanisms through which jewelry moved across national boundaries in the 19th century. In 1804, Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna, daughter of Tsar Paul I of Russia, married Karl Friedrich, hereditary Grand Duke of Saxe-Weimar-Eisenach. When Maria Pavlovna gave birth to her daughter, Princess Augusta, her mother gifted her a topaz suite 4 pieces comprising a grand necklace, a smaller bruc, a larger floral bruc with 2 detachable pendants that can be worn as earrings, and no tiara, which is why the set is referred to as a demi-parure rather than a full parure. The large pink topazes, framed by diamonds, entered Swedish possession through subsequent royal marriages and have been worn by Queen Louise, Queen Silvia, and others. The Connaught diamond tiara, sometimes called the Connaught diamond tiara in Swedish royal records, was a wedding gift in 1905 from the Duke and Duchess of Connaught to their daughter Princess Margaret of Connaught when she married Crown Prince Gustav Adolf of Sweden. Its garland design, composed of high-quality diamonds arranged in loops and festoons, reflects the Edwardian aesthetic that dominated European royal jewelry at the turn of the 20th century. Crown Princess Victoria has worn it on numerous occasions, including Nobel Prize ceremonies and state banquets. The Swedish royal jewelry collection matters in 2026 for reasons that extend beyond its aesthetic beauty and its monetary value, though both of those dimensions are substantial. As a historical record, the collection documents the network of relationships, diplomatic, marital, and personal, through which European royal families were connected across 2 centuries of political and social change. A single piece like the Vasa Earrings carries within its provenance history a record of the Swedish monarchy's transition from the Holstein-Gottorp dynasty to the Bernadotte dynasty, including the revolutionary moment of 1809 that removed Gustav I Adolf and the subsequent election of Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte that established the current royal house. The Braganza Tiara connects Sweden to the history of the Brazilian Empire, a political entity that existed from 1822 to 1889, and whose existence is known to most people primarily through the cultural history of the carnival and the architecture of Rio de Janeiro, rather than through the objects that its imperial family owned and wore. The Josephine connection, embodied in the Cameo Parure and in the pearl necklace that passed from Empress Josephine through her descendants to the Swedish collection, places the Bernadotte jewels within the larger story of Napoleon's transformation of French and European culture, a transformation whose aesthetic consequences are visible in decorative arts collections across the continent. As functional objects, these pieces remain in active use in ways that many comparable collections in museum settings are not. The fact that Crown Princess Victoria wears the Baden Fringe Tiara, that Queen Silvia reserves the Braganza Tiara for the most important occasions, and that Princess Madeleine wore the Vasa Earrings at her own wedding, these are not performances of historical recreation, but genuine acts of continuity in which objects pass from generation to generation, carrying accumulated significance without being frozen in museum vitrines. The history of the Bernadotte collection includes multiple moments of genuine jeopardy in which significant pieces came close to being lost permanently through exile, through financial crisis, through the upheavals that the 19th and early 20th centuries imposed on European royal families, with a consistency that transformed several of them from secure dynasties into exiled former royals. Living on the proceeds of sold jewelry. The Vasa Earrings journey through exile in Switzerland following Gustav IV Adolf's deposition in 1809 is the collection's most direct experience of this pattern. The earrings left Sweden with a deposed king and spent decades in private possession outside the country before returning through a marriage gift. The Braganza Tiara's pawning in London in 1831 represents a different kind of jeopardy, not exile driven by political revolution, but financial crisis driven by military necessity. Had Emperor Pedro I not prevailed in his campaign, or had he died before the jewels could be redeemed, the tiara might have remained in English hands rather than returning to the Brazilian and eventually the Swedish royal collection. The broader pattern of European royal jewelry dispersal in the early 20th century driven by the First World War, the fall of several European monarchies. The Russian Revolution and the economic crises of the interwar period affected families connected to the Swedish royal collection through marriage. The Russian topaz suite came to Sweden partly because the family networks that linked Swedish and Russian royalty were severed by the revolution, leaving pieces that might otherwise have remained in Russian possession to travel instead through Swedish inheritance. In 2026, the Swedish Royal Collection occupies a more stable institutional position than many comparable collections. But the history of the objects it contains is a reminder that this stability is not inherent to the objects themselves, but dependent on the political and institutional continuity of the dynasty that maintains them. The Bernadotte collection's history spans a period of dramatic transformation in European political, social, and cultural life. And the individual pieces in the collection register different moments in that transformation with the specificity of dated objects whose makers and original owners are known. The Cameo Tiara of approximately 1809 was created at the height of Napoleon's power, when the neoclassical aesthetic he promoted, drawing on ancient Greek and Roman formal vocabulary, was the dominant style across European luxury production. The engravers who created its cameos were among the most celebrated practitioners of an art form that had been practiced since antiquity and that the Napoleonic period elevated to new heights of sophistication and prestige. The Baden Fringe Tiara of 1881 reflects the Kokoschnik-inspired style that swept European royal jewelry in the late 19th century. When the close connections between the British, German, Russian, and Scandinavian royal families through Victoria's children and grandchildren created a pan-European royal fashion culture in which the same aesthetic influences appeared simultaneously in multiple national collections. The Connaught Diamond Tiara of 1905 embodies the Edwardian garland style, characterized by light. Airy designs in platinum set with diamonds, a reaction against the heavier gold settings of the Victorian period that dominated royal and aristocratic jewelry in the years immediately before the First World War. Reading the Bernadotte collection in chronological sequence is reading a history of European luxury aesthetics across more than 2 centuries. With each major piece marking a specific moment in that history while participating in the living tradition of use that Swedish royal occasions maintain. In 2026, the Swedish Royal Collection faces the same fundamental question that all historic jewelry collections held by living monarchies must address: how to balance the preservation requirements of irreplaceable historical objects with their continued use as functional components of living royal ceremonial culture. The Swedish monarchy's answer to this question has generally been toward continued use rather than preservation in the narrow sense, and the visual record of Crown Princess Victoria's appearances across state occasions, Nobel ceremonies, and royal weddings shows a deliberate engagement with the collection's significant pieces that maintains their cultural vitality while creating the documentation. trail that will allow future generations to understand what these objects were and where they appeared. The question of what happens to royal jewelry collections as European monarchies continue to evolve in their social and political functions is one that scholars, curators, and the institutions themselves are actively engaging with in 2026. The Swedish monarchy's constitutional position is secure, but the relationship between royal wealth, including the jewelry collection, and public expectation about transparency and appropriate use of resources connected to the state is one that requires ongoing management. The Braganza Tiara's use by Queen Silvia only for the most significant occasions reflects one approach to this management, treating the most valuable and historically significant pieces with a degree of restraint that acknowledges their importance while maintaining their living function. The continued active use of pieces like the Vasa Earrings and the Baden Fringe Tiara by Crown Princess Victoria and Princess Madeleine maintains the intergenerational circulation that is one of the collection's most historically significant characteristics. When Crown Princess Victoria wears the Cameo Tiara, the piece that Napoleon gifted to Josephine around 1809, that passed through her descendants to Queen Josephine of Sweden, that Princess Sibylla set aside, and Princess Birgitta revived in 1961, she is doing something that no museum display can replicate. She is extending the chain of use that connects the object to the people who have worn it across more than 2 centuries, adding her own chapter to a story whose previous chapters include the fall of a French empire, the marriage of a Swedish queen, and the personal decision of a princess to abandon something that no longer felt right before another princess recognized in it something worth reviving. The jewels of the Bernadotte collection are not merely beautiful, they are documents of human relationships and human choices, preserved not in archives or glass cases, but in the continuing fact of their use, which is the most powerful form of preservation that a wearable object can experience. In 2026, when most luxury objects are consumed and discarded within years of their creation, the Bernadotte jewelry collection represents something unusual, objects made with sufficient quality and maintained with sufficient care to survive not merely decades, but centuries, passing through hands that span the entire arc of modernity, from Napoleon to the present. The question these objects pose is not about monarchy or about privilege or even about the specific aesthetic achievement they represent, though all of those subjects are worth engaging with seriously. The question they pose is about what we make, and why, and whether what we make is worth the effort of passing it forward. The craftsmen who carved the cameos in the Cameo Tiara, the goldsmiths who assembled the Braganza Tiara's exceptional Brazilian diamonds, the jeweler Palsy who created the esclavage bow for Catherine the Great, and whose work eventually found its way into Swedish royal hands, none of them could have known how long their work would last, or whose hands would hold it after the first generation. They made it as well as they could, and here it is. What would it mean for the things we make in 2026 to reflect that kind of commitment?